If DNS stopped working, the internet wouldn't be broken, but it would just be unusable. You see, the problem is, humans and computers speak two completely different languages. We use names and words, and computers just use numbers. And DNS is the translator between the two. In this video, I'll explain what DNS is, how DNS works, and how to configure it on a real layer 3 Cisco switch. So let's start with the big question. What is DNS? And to help explain that, the guys at PingMyNetwork are letting me use their platform to make it easier to understand. So imagine you're PC 1 and you try to access youtube.com. You're trying to access this video. What do you think will happen? Will PC 1 go straight to YouTube? No, it won't. Because remember, computers use numbers to communicate. So when you type in youtube.com on your web browser, your computer does not know what that is, has no clue. So the first thing PC1 has to do when it wants to go to youtube.com is it has to resolve the domain name. It has to resolve youtube.com. This basically just means it has to find the IP address of youtube.com. So PC1 will send a DNS query to the DNS server. It's going to be asking, what is the IP address of youtube.com? Then guess what happens after that? The DNS server will send a DNS query response back to the PC with the IP address of youtube.com, assuming it knows where youtube.com is, of course. So this is the fundamentals of DNS. The PC doesn't know what youtube.com is, so it has to send a query to the DNS server. The DNS server will send a response back with the IP address of that domain that they were querying. And to make sure that you guys are paying attention, PingMyNetwork has questions that you have to answer within the module. So what must be resolved before communication can begin? And the answer for that would be domain name, I think. I hope. There we go. And you can see I got 10 XP and I got the answer correct. Now, your PC actually does something that's super convenient. It has something called a DNS cache. It'll store the IP address that it learned from the DNS server locally, so it doesn't have to keep querying the DNS server over and over and over again just to get the same answer. So first, before PC1 sends a DNS query to the DNS server, it'll check its own DNS cache to see if it already knows the answer. And if youtube.com is already in PC1's DNS cache, it can just use that IP address immediately and start communicating with youtube.com. If you're on Windows, you can actually check your DNS cache to see what domains your PC already knows the IP addresses of. And the command to do that is ipconfig/display DNS in command prompt. And we can try it out right here. So ipconfig/display DNS. There we go. And you can see that it has two entries for youtube.com. This one and this one. So what's the difference? One of them is a AAA record, which is IPv6, and one of them is an A record, which is IPv4. That's the only difference between the two. Okay, so now let's look at actual DNS configuration. So on a Cisco router or a layer 3 switch, you really only need two commands to configure DNS. The first one is IP name server, and then the IP address of the DNS server that you want to query. And the second one is IP domain lookup. And IP domain lookup actually, I think it's already enabled by default on Cisco switches at least. So there might only need to be one command you actually need to configure, and it's just this one. And this command just tells the router or the layer 3 switch what DNS server to use. And IP domain lookup, it allows the router to perform DNS lookups. So we can test that out right in the browser using PingMyNetwork as well. R1 conft IP name server 8.8.8.8 and IP domain lookup. Then and ping youtube.com. There we go. So this command told the router to use 8.8.8.8 as its DNS server. This command allows the router to perform DNS queries, and ping youtube.com is just testing to see if the domain lookups are working or if the domain server is working. So yeah, it's that simple to configure on routers. So before we actually configure our real layer 3 switch, I want to give a huge shout out to PingMyNetwork. These guys created a product that makes studying for the CCNA fun and engaging. Like, they literally have EXP, a leaderboard, they have streaks, and they have cool sound effects. So what more could you want? I have a link in the description if you want to check them out. If you're watching this within 7 days of me uploading, you can use code Paulo for 15% off. Or if you're watching this after 7 days, you can still use the same code for 10% off. Or you can try it out for free just to see if you like it first. Now, let's actually configure our switch. So in our topology today, we're just going to use our Windows laptop, and we're going to use a switch. So just two devices. Bro, check this out, bro. This is sick. My brother just went to Japan and he got Naruto figure. So we're just gonna plug in the Ethernet cable into port 1 on the switch and plug it into our laptop. And that's the only cabling we need today. And here. Oh, and obviously we need to plug in the console cable as well. So plugging in here. There we go. Okay, so on our Windows laptop, let's go to Device Manager, COM5, putty, COM5. We're using our Windows laptop as the DNS server. We're running something called Technetium. It's this thing, which allows the Windows laptop to act as a DNS server. We're gonna configure the switch to use our Windows laptop as its DNS server. So I've already configured the switch with an IP address in the same network as our Windows laptop. So the only thing we need to do is run the two commands that we looked at previously. So enable conft. We could do IP name server and then the IP address of our Windows laptop because the Windows laptop is acting as our DNS server. 192.168.99.10 and then IP domain lookup. I'm pretty sure this is already enabled by default, but let's do it just to make sure. And that should be everything. Now let's try to ping youtube.com. Ping youtube.com. So when we do this ping, the switch should query our laptop. The laptop should send the IP address back, and then the switch should try to ping that IP address. You see how it says here? This is the DNS server that we configured. So it's contacting it, and see, it got the IP address. This is the IP address of google.com, or youtube.com. The pings will fail actually because our switch doesn't have internet connectivity. It's just, I don't have an uplink for it. So yeah, it's supposed to fail, but the point is we got the IP address from our Windows laptop, our DNS server. And if we go to Google, we can see it's 748 right now. At 748, it got three, I don't know what this means, three total, it got 3 queries from the switch. Since I was testing it out, it says 9 queries here. 9 queries from 192.168.99.1, which is the IP address of our switch. So yeah, this just confirms that our switch actually did contact the DNS server on our laptop. Once again, I want to give a huge shout out to PingMyNetwork for allowing me to use their platform to help explain DNS. Yeah, there's a link in the description if you guys want to check them out. They make learning the CCNA fun and engaging. If you want to watch another video, click the link on the screen right now. If you want to subscribe, you click the other link on the screen right now. And I'll see you guys in the next video.